Welcome to the Cancer Vax CEO Chats. Today, I'm joined with a dear friend and a former colleague, Dr. Jonathan Lakey. Jonathan, thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Looking forward to it.
So I'll attempt to give a little bit of background and a little bit of your bio, and when I'm finished, going through that, maybe Jonathan, maybe you can fill in any gaps if I've missed anything. But
sure.
But yeah, you graduated from the University of Alberta with, love Alberta. That's a conversation. Sorry to get on a tangent, but we need to have a conversation about my first experience at Stampede.
Okay, yeah, no.
Okay.
We could organize a trip up here too.
That'd be great. So you graduated from University of Alberta with a bachelor's and a master's and a PhD. And then did your postdoctoral work in Indianapolis and also in Seattle. You served as the director of Comprehensive Tissue Bank at the University of Alberta, and then as the professor of surgery and biomedical engineering and the director of the clinical ISLIT program at the University of California at UC Irvine. You, along with Dr. James Shapiro, led the work that led to the improvement of the isolation techniques and the development of what you guys call the Edmonton protocol, which I understand has been used for a very long time, even present day, for patients with type 1 diabetes. And this really signified a major advancement, medical advancement in the treatment of diabetes. You've been recognized nationally and internationally for your groundbreaking research, Jonathan. You're the recipient of the Outstanding Leadership Science Award, Alberta in Science and Technology, the Outstanding Achievement Award from the Canadian Diabetes Association, awards from the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons, and you were even honored as the Meritorious Service Medal, received the Meritorious Service Medal in 2005 by the Governor General of Canada. Dr. Lakey's been published in over 495 scientific papers, 45 book chapters, submitted over 500 scientific abstracts, and published a book on isolation. That's a little bit about you. Have I missed anything? I get tired just reading that. Like, how have you done all that?
Thank you for the kind introduction, and really that summarizes my efforts both in Canada and in Irvine, California. Papers are now over 500, which is great. So I've cleared that milestone and continue to work on publishing scientific manuscripts that detail some of the work that we've been doing in the various fields.
So, Jonathan, you really do have an impressive resume, and we're excited to have you here talking with us today. What led you to your field of study, and what really excites you about it?
So, while in Canada at the University of Alberta, I was involved in, as an undergraduate student, some research and got fascinated about organ preservation and preserving organs. My dad was a transplant surgeon. In fact, he did Canada's first kidney transplant before I was even born. So he trained in Boston with the Nobel Prize winner, Joseph Murray. And so I really have it in my blood to be involved in transplantation. And so I got interested in islet cell transplantation, got interested in how we can preserve organs, because Canada's a vast country, and we needed to come up with better ways of shipping organs from cadaveric donors, so people that have died in car accidents where they've consented to using their organs and tissues for transplantation. So I came into that trying to come up with ways, and then together with James Shapiro, who was a young surgeon that came to Alberta to do a liver transplant fellowship, we worked in the field of islet cell transplantation, and that's a treatment for patients with type 1 diabetes. We were able to come up with some changes, and being a very aggressive surgeon, we were able to develop what was called the Edmonton protocol, which was a treatment for patients with type 1 diabetes. And through that, I was able to assist and support other programs around the world to try and maximize the opportunity of islet cell transplantation for patients with type 1 diabetes. Now it's been over thousands of patients have received that, and there's now I think 65 or 68 transplant centers that have adopted the protocol. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment, but it also recognized the limitations of the protocol because we relied on organ donors. And that was one of the reasons why I was recruited to the University of California, Irvine, and I was a founding member of the Sue and Bill Gross Stem Cell Center. So Bill Gross from PIMCO put some money into Irvine and developed a standalone facility. I think you've been there, to focus on stem cell research. So my role there was to look at ways to eliminate the need for organ donors by using stem cell and stem cell derived products. I also was involved in biomedical engineering and focused on using biomaterials to protect these cells from the immune attack. So we're able to really transform what was the Edmonton protocol into something that can be used to treat the millions and millions of diabetics worldwide.
It's such a huge, almost an epidemic at this point. So
absolutely, the cost to the healthcare systems is in the hundreds of billions of dollars every year. There's 90 plus million individuals in the United States, plus another, tens of millions that are undiagnosed. So it is an epidemic, and we need to understand how we can treat these patients. And so the islet cell transplantation is one aspect of my work. I'm also working on other treatments to treat diabetes, to wound healing, and things like that.
Yeah, you in your work with islet transplantation, you even helped set up over 40 transplant centers around the world.
Yes.
Tell me about this experience. That sounds pretty amazing.
It was a wild times, and I spent a lot of time traveling and giving lectures and supporting programs where they had kidney transplant programs and saw the opportunity of islet cell transplant. And so it's everything from setting up clean rooms to validating clean rooms to sharing protocols for the isolation and characterization of the cells before implantation. So around the world several times, and really a wonderful opportunity to help support and to help patients with diabetes. So I'm very proud of that.
Did you have any other research focuses outside of tissue transplantation?
So yes, I've dabbled in a lot of different areas of transplantation. I've done some work on liver transplants, hepatocytes specifically. Part of my PhD thesis back in Edmonton was focusing on ways to freeze and thaw cells and organs and tissues. So I've got some projects ongoing where we're looking at methods to preserve the function of these cells following cryopreservation. Also working with different groups on some treatments for type 2 diabetes using pulsatile insulin. That's a program that I'm working with the First Americans, so a tribe at the Morongo Reservation up by Palm Springs, and have set up a clinic there to treat their patients. So a lot of rewarding activities outside of my basic transplant work.
Oh, that's fascinating. I know a couple of guys that own a number of kidney dialysis treatment centers and focus on diabetes patients almost exclusively. I should and again, make an introduction there.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help out.
As you know, the company I'm with, CancerVax, we're focused on developing immunotherapies for Ewing sarcoma, and then we're developing a universal cancer vaccine to treat multiple different types of cancers. And I know that islet cell tumors, if I understand it correctly, that are derived essentially from the hormone-making cells in the pancreas, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So do you have any involvement in the oncology side of things during your career?
Absolutely. So there were 2 cases of young children that had developed nistidoblastosis, which is basically a cancer of the beta cell within the pancreas. And so they've got this beta cell cancer, and the treatment is basically doing a pancreatectomy or a partial pancreatectomy, where the surgeon goes in and takes out a majority of their pancreas, hoping that they don't take out too much of the pancreas and the child becomes diabetic. And so a colleague of mine in Calgary, where the Stampede is, as well as another group in Edmonton, we developed a protocol where the surgeon took out the pancreas, or is what he thought would be a sufficient size and mass of the pancreas, gave it to me. I took it back to our clean rooms in our laboratory and processed that pancreas. And basically, we were able to take the cells, the islet cells that we isolated from that damaged pancreas, and we cryopreserved them. So we preserved them using a defined protocol using cryoprotective agents, slow cooling, so that we can thaw those cells if necessary in the future if that child becomes diabetic. And so for me, it was really rewarding to go down and bring this organ back and have an option for those children if the tumor needed further support from a cell standpoint.
And that actually sounds very rewarding.
Yes, and I had some experience back in Canada. I was also the director of the cord blood bank, so collecting cord blood bag and banking that part of my comprehensive tissue center work. And so dealing with orthopedics. In cancers and orthopedics, I also, as part of the tissue center, preserve bone and bone fragments from the orthopedic surgeons that were used in some of their cancer surgeries. So,
it'd be fascinating and maybe a future discussion, Jonathan, but is in your work with stem cells and also just with tissues and bones, as we look at developing treatment for Ewing sarcoma, which is a bone and soft tissue disease, it really would be interesting to see sort of the overlap there and what additional therapies can be developed with the stem cell programs that are out there.
Absolutely, love to explore that opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing that is fascinating to me, Jonathan, is that you spent a big part of your career bridging the gap between academia, at University of Alberta and also at UC Irvine, between academia and the biotech world. And you've seemed to, I believe you've been involved in a lot of private sector type of businesses, but maintaining your role at UCI. Why is that important, do you think?
So I'm a translational guy. I want to see my technologies, my efforts in patients. That's always been one of my focuses is really, there are a ton of university people that make a fantastic career and just working on very small, focused research that doesn't have clinical applications. And I've always looked to industry as a way to get things done. In an academic world, it's sometimes very tough to proceed into clinical trials. Just the costs, you need industry to support that. I've also used industry to help support some of the work that was being done in our academic labs through contract research and through opportunities. So I see it as a blending of each area's expertise that allows us to be successful and drive things forward.
Yeah, I agree. It really is a win-win to me. And, I've over more than a decade now worked with many different universities and many different scientists. And I'd say stereotypically, the majority of the scientists are in the lab because that's their happy place, right?
Yeah.
But the minute they get outside of the lab, it's sort of fish out of the water. And every once in a while, I come across an individual who is just as successful in the lab as he is outside of the lab. You're one of those people, Jonathan, and it's really quite unique to have that kind of a talent set.
Well, thank you for the compliment, and I really enjoy the interactions and working with industry. It's just two different perspectives, and I see a lot of commonality in terms of goals.
So, what are one or two of the most rewarding projects that you've worked on in your career?
Certainly the Edmonton protocol. Early in my academic career, I was able to get involved and help direct the efforts. And we started out as a team of of two individuals, Shapiro and myself, and just, we started to get a technician. And then, so by the time I left Edmonton, there were 40 plus individuals, nurses, caseworkers, technicians, all involved in the program. And just as we transplanted more and more patients, we had to bring and build the staffing, and really became its own entity over time. So that was a very rewarding, and to see and to meet patients that have had the procedure and the success of it. There was one individual who was a diabetic for 50 plus years. He had developed diabetes when he was 2 years old, was taking insulin. He was involved in a car wreck as a result of his hypoglycemic. His blood sugars went down. He passed out. His wife died in the accident. He was injured. And we transplanted him with some of our pancreatic islet cells, and he was insulin free for about 4 years, meaning he could function as a normal individual. Other individuals who, after the transplant, they didn't need to wake up their spouse, during the night to check their blood sugar. Simple things like that we take advantage of, and the worry that was it was taken away after the islet transplant procedure. So that's one of the things. The other real thing is that I enjoyed through my career is working with young students, and I was fortunate enough to have two young men at the University of Alberta that came to me as high school students, worked their way through both. So anyway, so working with students is very rewarding. And I've had students that have gone on to go into academic life, students that have gone to industry. So it's been really a thing to see the students evolve, develop, and you get a commitment from the students. You work with them to get them on some papers, and you see their careers develop, which is really rewarding.
Well, Jonathan, as I look back at your career and take a step back, and as an outsider, you're an academician, you're an author, you're a mentor, you're a teacher, you're an innovator, and your contribution really has been great. And not only is it a pleasure knowing you, and it's been a pleasure working with you, but it's been a great pleasure talking with you today. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.